Good to be here. Um, we met, I guess, maybe a month or two, getting now, at our farm in Glen Mills in Delaware County, Pennsylvania. It was a great day, beautiful day to tour the farm together, get to meet each other. I am sitting in Germantown, Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, where I live. My family is a member of St. Vincent de Paul Catholic Church here in Germantown. And we started Truelove Seeds in 2017. Um, I'm joining you late because we have a 6-year-old and there's a lot of bedtime things happening. But I'm glad to be with you here now. We, uh, we're a seed company that's focused on culturally important seeds. That's really what makes us distinct from other seed companies. Of course, we also focus on sustainable agriculture and food justice. Uh, but our primary focus is on all of the growers that we work with, including ourselves, growing our ancestral seeds or the seeds that are important to our cultural backgrounds and providing those for customers around the world, specifically US, Canada, the UK, in terms of where we can legally ship seeds to. Uh, with those seeds of our, respective homelands grown by people to whom they are very important. And so I'll give you, I'll tell you briefly how I got to this point before I dive into True Love Seeds. Like, why did we start a seed company like this? And I grew up in Northeastern Connecticut. I spent some time in San Francisco and New York. In both places, I worked with community gardeners and food organizations, food policy councils, food justice movements, environmental justice movements. And so a real focus on supporting grassroots leaders who were doing very meaningful and concrete things in their communities to address environmental and food injustices. And so, especially in New York City, before I moved here, I moved to Philly 10 years ago. I worked for 7 years in New York with an organization called Just Food. And our focus, my particular focus there, even though it was really a food systems wide organization, my focus there was in the City Farms program and specifically working with the elder, well, really all ages of community gardeners, but especially the elders who had started the community gardening, the contemporary community gardening movement in the 70s and 80s and 90s in places like the South Bronx and Central Brooklyn, in Harlem and the Lower East Side, where there was major disinvestment and white flight, leaving behind vacant lots that were then transformed by these visionaries into really productive, beautiful spaces. And so while I was there, I, it was the beginning, the mid 2000s when people started talking about urban agriculture as if it was this new thing. And here there were these gardens that had been around for decades. And so our focus was to lift up these elders who were mostly um, gardeners of color as the experts on urban agriculture in the city as this movement was building. And so that's kind of the groundwork for where I then moved to Philadelphia for love. My partner runs the farm at Bartram's Garden, Sankofa Community Farm at Bartram's Garden. And so I was kind of drawn here as when we got married, and I was a part-time community organizer for the Public Interest Law Center, focused on building a constituency of community gardeners in Philadelphia as we are now facing a huge amount of development and loss of these historic community gardens. And so I got a part-time job doing that and needed more work. And so I ended up in Devon, Pennsylvania, part-time, working with Dr. William Woys Weaver of Roughwood Seed Collection, who I'd never heard of before. And I just needed more work and just entered into this universe of seeds that I didn't know existed. And got to see his 4,000 varieties of heirloom seeds that lived in his house in this old historic inn. uh, and that he had been caring for since the 60s when he found them in his grandfather's deep freezer who had passed away. And so he was able to inherit accidentally this amazing seed collection. And he became a food writer, a food historian. He's many cookbooks and histories of heirloom vegetables. I fell into working with him and just fell in love with that work, especially with the stories behind the seeds. And as a lifelong gardener since I was a teenager, just fell in love with meeting all of these interesting plants that I'd never seen before. I realized over the 4 years that I worked with him that the stories were often disconnected from their people. And we had this living museum from around the world of these culturally important seeds that were no longer being tended by their original caretakers. And with my history in the food justice movement, where we always talk about people having access to healthy, affordable, sustainable, and culturally appropriate seeds and foods, I saw that there could be a connection there. And so we started Truelove Seeds to make that connection. And I'll jump to a slideshow if I can figure out how to do that. So I can show you a little more about Truelove Seeds. Let me see here. So Truelove Seeds. I'm gonna fast forward a little bit here. So I can figure out how to move to the next screen. So, in my 15 years at that point of working with uh, farmers within the food justice movement, I had a lot of connections with people who were doing amazing community work with. They were the first people I reached out to consider growing seeds for our seed. So instead of looking for experienced seed growers, trained seed growers, we were looking for farmers who were doing cultural preservation work within their communities um, and who were interested in going deeper through seed saving. And so we offer mentorship. This was actually, I made this slide probably 2018, 1 year. Since then, now we have 70 farms. And this is an example of some of the first ones. Many of them are here in the Philadelphia area um, and right in Philadelphia. And what we do with the farms that we work with is I give them mentorship as needed in producing seeds at the scale where they can sell them through a company. But we also give them half of the income that comes from seed sales. And so if someone buys a $4 pack of seeds from Mill Creek, Philadelphia, that farm gets two of those dollars. And so it's kind of a radical profit sharing model uh, in that most seed companies pay per ounce or per pound. And a lot of times they're paying per pound what we pay per ounce, if you do the math. So we wanted this to be a model that really lifted up the farmers, told their stories, and compensated them really well for the work that they were doing. These were the first people that came to our first gathering of Philadelphia growers to talk about what could a seed company look like in Philadelphia, focused on cultural storytelling. And so it just kind of grew from there. In our last greenhouse with lettuce seed, if you've never seen lettuce flowers, here they are. Usually if you grow lettuce and you forget about it, and then, the next stage is saving the seeds once they poof out. Here's our current team. This was last year actually, but everyone here is still involved in some way. So we work at our farm in Glen Mills, and we also rent office and greenhouse space in Kensington, where we ship orders and store our seed, collect and start our seeds. Every year we go to Novik Community Farm, who works primarily with Karen refugees from Burma, and we do a seed cleaning day. This was our 6th annual seed cleaning day this season here, where they break out the rice winnowing baskets back home. and help us to clean our seeds, and we help them to clean their seeds. We work with a lot of immigrants and refugees as part of our program, particularly because a lot of them are still stewarding their traditional seeds and making them available for.
Owen, can I just interrupt? We're having a little trouble hearing you, so it gets crackly and then we can't hear you.
Oh, I wonder what's going on. Is it crackling now?
So it's crackling now,
Hmm.
and now it's not.
Okay.
Sounds like running water.
Hmm. There's nothing running in here.
And
I wonder.
now it's crackling.
Hmm. Well, if we take a quick break, I can try my phone using it from my phone.
Okay.
I'll just click on. I'll find your email and try that.
Okay. Thanks. I just want to make sure we get what you're saying.
Okay. Oh. Well, is it crackly right now?
No.
I just I just got a new phone and it has to re-download Zoom.
Okay. All right. So go ahead. Go ahead. If there's nothing that's fine.
I'm working on it, but
Okay.
I'll continue as well. Oh,
Thanks.
there we go. Oh, it wants me to get a meeting ID. Okay. Sorry. Let's see here. Oh, I think I'm coming in now. Okay.
Recording in progress.
Oops, let me Can you hear me now?
I heard that and it echoed. Talk again. I'm not hearing you from your phone. Is the volume turned up?
Okay, how about now?
That is beautiful.
Okay, let's try this.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, sorry about that. I'm not sure what was going on. So did you miss anything that seemed important that I should go back over or just move forward?
It was just hard. It was just a little distracting. So I think this is going to be better. And I think we caught most everything and we can ask questions at the end if we have them. Okay.
Okay, great. Sorry about that. Okay, let's move forward. So what else? You know, these are some of my seeds that I steward. My ancestry is Southern Italian and Irish mostly. And so all of us, regardless of where we come from, focus on our ancestral seeds. And so, you know, these are mostly Italian here, except for those potatoes, which are Irish. And it's a lot easier to find Southern Italian seeds than Irish heirlooms, just because of the history of colonialism is different in these places. These are some of the crops kept by other people. My partner is holding those beans there, which are from Mississippi, some butter beans that he grew up shelling with his grandmother on her porch. And that's still actually the basis for the logo of our company is that picture. You know, that's really the focus here. In the upper corner with the bitter melons, the long green melons, that's, you know, a woman, Co Fung from Viet Lead in Camden, where they grow Vietnamese crops. They're all a refugee community, multiple generations now. You know, and the little boy holding the calendulas from Soul Fire Farm and outside of Albany, New York, where they focus on African diasporic crops, but also healing crops like the calendula, a lot of herbal medicine crops. And this is a little community garden in West Philly with these peas, the red peas, where one of the members is Gullah Geechee from Georgia and the Carolinas. And so this is the Gullah Geechee Sea Island red pea. So these are the types of stories and seeds that we carry in the catalog just to preserve these really important, often hard to find varieties. Yeah, I have this little list I put together a while back just to give you a sense of some of the values behind our model. Of course, we're based in the food justice movement, food sovereignty movement. And that's kind of what drives our work, to support people's ability to grow the foods that are most important to them on their own terms in their own spaces, and learn how to save those seeds so they're not reliant on bringing them in from other countries or, losing them altogether. We're moving from a seed bank model to one that's really an active relationship with the plants and their people. We use the word rematriation, which we've learned from indigenous communities, around making sure that the seeds we have, especially from indigenous communities, are able to go back to those communities, even if they've spent generations in seed banks or in private collections. And this is also based in the idea that people are experts in their own experience. And we ask, the stories we tell about seeds, we base them in learning them from the people to whom they're most important. Whether that's in our description or in our podcast. We have a podcast called Seeds and Their People. I'm working on the 16th episode now with one of our Kenyan apprentices. So we want to hear from the literal voices of the farmers that we know, and the chefs that we know, and the seed keepers that we know. And we also talk about everyone having a culture and ancestral seeds, even if we have been disconnected from that culture or from that ancestry, like I was. I mean, I remember my Italian great-grandparents, but they didn't pass on the foodways. And so our work is about keeping people connected or reconnecting people to this meaningful relationship with the foods that nourished our ancestors and got us here today. And so that everyone can come to the table with something to offer, the literal table, with something literal to offer from the garden, from the farm, from the kitchen. We decided to be a company because I'd been in nonprofits for 15 years before starting this, and wanted to try a model where we funded our work by orienting ourselves towards gardeners and farmers instead of philanthropies, wealthy donors and foundations. And so far we've made it, we still exist, and so it's working. We're able to fund our work this way, though we are about to start a fundraiser to kind of fill a gap, since everyone got a beyond a living wage raise this year. We kind of, with how much we pay our farmers and how much we pay ourselves, we now are going to try to fill the gap with a fundraiser. So that's the gist of it. The next kind of gets to the environmental part. We use natural farming principles. We till as little as possible. We try to be a no-till farm. We don't use any chemical inputs. We grow tons of pollinator plants. We are really focused on feeding the soil as a way to have a healthy ecosystem on our farm. And the last piece is just how long relationships take. We're trying to move at the speed of trust with the farmers that we work with, especially because we're working with so many communities that have lots of reasons not to trust. And so as we're working with immigrant communities, refugee communities, communities of color, small family farms, we don't push, an agenda, but we offer a lot of resources, and some seeds take years to come to fruition. And so, sometimes 5 years into a relationship, we have a successful seed crop grown by somebody we've been courting. So these are the values behind our work. And that's really it. I wanted to leave plenty of time to answer questions. I'm sure I've missed a lot. So please, ask away.
So maybe, Owen, can you stop sharing your screen so we can all see each other? That would be great.
Sure.
And if you have a question, if you could raise your hand, your little yellow hand. So I actually would like you to talk a little bit more about some of the farms with whom you work, and how you have some method of reparation, right? Where you maybe charge less for the seeds or don't charge for the seeds for certain farms. Can you talk about that a little bit? I probably didn't say that well.
No, that's great. Well, we do have this rematriation program where we send indigenous varieties to specific tribes who request them free of charge. So we do steward many Lenape varieties, many Lenni Lenape varieties, the original people of this land. We also work with the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe in eastern Massachusetts to steward one of their traditional corns. We also have a variety from a Haudenosaunee Nation, or we often call the Iroquois Nation, specifically the Mohawk community. And so with those three groups, we send those seeds for free anytime an individual or a nation contacts us requesting them. But we also send 25% of our sales of those varieties to specific projects within those nations, land-based projects. So those are two ways that we support, food and land sovereignty within those particular nations.
And do you grow those seeds on your farm in Glen Mills, or are other people growing them other places?
We do grow most of the Lenape seeds on our farm. We do have partners in the region who grow more of them so we can have more to offer. We work with the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe. They grow their corn for our catalog and for themselves, and get a huge port. The 75% of their sale goes back to them. We just cover our costs. In the Akwesasne or Haudenosaunee variety from the Mohawk Nation is grown by another grower in New York, closer to their nation. And our goal is, of course, for everyone to grow their own seeds. And so we're trying to figure out how to work with Lenape growers to grow their own seeds. And so that's where the relationship takes a very long time. Yeah. So.
Does anybody else have any questions for Owen? Okay, so I'm going to share that Bryn Mawr Pres, as a part of our Advent gift market, is using Owen and Truelove Seeds as an alternative gift. So people can pay $4 for a pack of seeds. They don't get the pack of seeds. They get a certificate that says, in your name, a pack of seeds has been purchased from Truelove Seeds. And then the money goes to Truelove Seeds. We're also, I think, going to buy, and Owen and I have talked about this, some seeds to hand out at there's a one in-person event at the event, so that people can hold these packs of seeds and know what is being given in as they make these alternative gifts. So I'm so excited about this opportunity, and that was one of the reasons that we went out to see the farm. And then the other thing, can you talk about the fact that you're looking for an inner city location?
Sure. So we have been renting land since we started, at one location in Delaware County in Newtown Square, and then that land was sold, and now in another location. We love the family we rent from. We can stay there as long as we want. We are outgrowing, which is news to us. We just learned that we can stay there within the last month. We both didn't realize how much we liked each other and wanted. So that's nice that we can stay. But we are outgrowing the space. We're on 2/3 of an acre. We sell out of everything really quickly. We have a huge demand for our seeds. And in order to grow as a company and support our staff better, we would like to grow on a larger space. We also, all of us live in Philadelphia, all of my coworkers, and we drive an hour a day each way to our farm. So we're hoping to reduce the amount that we're driving and have some more space. And so we've been looking for somewhere that's closer to Philly or in Philly, where we can have a sense of security that we won't have to leave if something happens with the landowners. Like And so we've been looking at working with some high schools potentially who have a good amount of land, or with a homeless shelter. We've looked at some private properties, but nothing has been quite the right fit yet. We're not ruling them all out yet, but we're still looking for the right fit where it seems like we could have some long-term rental agreement or even purchase land if we were able to find the funds. So that's where we're at now. It is difficult to be renting and not have that security. Mhm.
Oh, and would you be interested in, like, if a C3 got the grant money and passed it along to you, that it would be a through grant to you?
We would.
Because I was saying before you got on that there's $10,000 from PICO that we as a C3 can apply for that you can't. And also other funding that I know constantly is coming through us, but we generally don't have the capacity to do the farming. And I have a grant that I've been working on for the last couple of years, trying to do it at a school, but not on the scale that you're doing it. But I think that if we had somebody like you to do it, then I think you and Katie, who's on the call as well, could talk about that at greater length. But there's definitely opportunities out there for us to pass money through us to you in that way.
That would be great. We do that to some extent. For this year is our first year doing that kind of thing. We were a pass-through for PASA Sustainable Agriculture because we were mentoring many apprentices that were also being certified through their program, through the Organic Seed Alliance, because we were mentoring someone taking part in their apprenticeship program, and through Food Moxie here in Philadelphia, who had extra funding that they couldn't use because of a shift in their programming. So this year we did get grant money through all of those nonprofits. So we're definitely open to that. As much as I said we were trying not to be a nonprofit, we do want to fund our work. So we're very open to creative solutions.
And so, Owen, David is the outgoing executive director, and Katie is the incoming executive director of Pennsylvania Interfaith Power and Light. So,
Great.
Just so you know who you're talking to.
Oh, great. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'd love to talk about that.
Anybody else? I have more questions. So if you have questions, you need to like muscle me out of the way. Anybody?
Yeah, I can ask. I'm a little confused, Owen, about this. And maybe I didn't hear it quite. But you're doing. Where are you getting the original seeds? And are you working? Is this piece of a biodiversity project as well? And who are you selling the seeds to? And then I'm not a farmer, so I'm trying to understand. Let's say I saw the flowers. I think you said they were of lettuce. So does the lettuce not get eaten? You just grow to the seed?
Okay, these are great questions. These are great questions. I talk to so many different types of groups. It's helpful to ground me in what your questions are. So yes, I'll answer the easy ones first. Yes, we do not really eat the lettuce. We hardly eat any of our crops. We're focused on seed production. Someone has to grow the seeds that are in the packets, and that's us. We do plant twice as much lettuce as we ultimately want, so that we can take every other plant at its like prime harvest stage and then leave extra room for the other plants to get really big and tall and go to seed. So yeah, there's ways we can creatively also get a food crop from a lot of these things. Like tomatoes, we always take home the tomato flesh after we squeeze the seeds out. And I made 50 quarts of tomato sauce this year and last year. And that's our tomato sauce for the year. And peppers, the same thing. We dehydrate the flesh, we freeze it, we make pepper flakes, we make pepper sauce. And so there's ways that we still get food out of our farm. We're actually hoping to make a cookbook this year for seed farmers about how to use all of the byproducts of seed saving and other ways to harvest food from a seed farm without compromising the seed harvest. We Our seeds, we grow maybe a third of the varieties of seeds that are in our catalog, and the other 70 farms grow the rest. And so we're all growing the seeds on our farms, harvesting them, processing them, drying them. They get brought to our office, they get sent to us from the other farms. We germination test them to make sure they're viable. We do some final cleaning before that point. And then once we know that they have a good germination rate, we send them to a Department of Agriculture germination lab. Once we've done all that, we can packet them up and ship them around the country. And so that's kind of the seed to customer journey. And where do we get the seeds before that? A lot of our seeds, like I said, with the immigrant and refugee groups, with the farms that are focused on their cultural foods, a lot of times they already steward these varieties, whether it's because they've been caring for them for generations, or someone brought them over from somewhere else, at some point, but they've been growing them on their farm for a long time for their communities. And so a lot of times that's the seed source. Other times we're working with people like myself who had been disconnected from their cultural seeds and are trying to relocate them or find some meaningful connection. And then once we identify a crop that they think they can grow for seed that feels meaningful, we look for a source. And so it may come from another company, it may come from the USDA as a seed collection, the Seed Savers Exchange in Iowa. I'm in contact with the people that work in their library, and they love it when I write to them. I say, oh, there's this species that we're looking for this Burmese community. Do you have it in there? And so there's ways to find the seeds that we're looking for often. There's certainly some things that are stumping us that we can't find a source for. So it's often an international journey, not for us, but for the seeds. So yeah, was there another question in there that I missed?
No, I think you got it. So you've got these farmers and you're helping them to grow not plants but seeds, and then you're collectively bringing them in so you can better sell them nationwide. Have I got that?
Exactly.
Okay.
So because I worked with Dr. Weaver for 4 years, kind of gathering the skill set of how to save seeds, and then we were selling seeds also at that point. So I kind of learned how to start a seed company. And a lot of the farmers we work with don't want to go through the trouble of building a website, communicating with customers, signing up as a seed vendor for their state, paying the sales taxes, all the things that we have to do to sell seeds. We're doing that on behalf of the farmers. So that they don't have to, and that's appealing to most of them. So that's how it works.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then like I said, we send half of our proceeds to them. So with a lot of the things that we sell, we're really just covering costs and making a very sliver of a profit, which is another reason we're looking to expand our farm, since we don't have to share those proceeds. It helps us to grow as many of our varieties as possible to kind of subsidize the amount that we give to the farmers we work with. So.
And so can you talk about a little bit about the sort of the infrastructure of the land that you use? And so when I was out there, I said how beautiful it was and how hard it would be to move to another location because they'd have to dismantle everything. And Owen said to me, oh, we take it down every fall anyway. So can you just talk a little bit about how you set things up and how you lay out the crops and how the planting works?
Sure. So almost everything we grow for seed is an annual, which means it really just alive for that 1 year, goes to seed in 1 year. Probably 95% of our plants are annuals. And so yes, they all come down every year. We put the farm to bed, we take down the stalks and put in cover crop if we can. And what the infrastructure that stays is a deer fence and a rabbit fence and our drip irrigation system. The farm we rent from has high tunnels, or what would look like greenhouses to most people, just a little less high tech. So that's pretty much it. We grow maybe 400 dahlias, which we dig up every year and divide and store. We grow some biennials, which we have to protect for the winter from the cold and the wind. And so you might see, in January, our field will have a few low tunnels of cabbage family plants that we're hoping to keep alive for the winter and get seeds from the next year, and spinach. But in July, August, it'll be this lush, almost jungle of plants, because we grew around 125 different varieties in the 2/3 of an acre, over 100 different species. And so it's really diverse. I guess you had a question about biodiversity. Our focus is really on, yes, biodiversity, but because we are a diverse people, we of course want a robust ecosystem, which really benefits from the biodiversity that we steward. Our main focus beyond that is representing or making sure that people have access to their traditional seeds. And so that if you come through our farm, my coworkers and I come from really different corners of the world. This year we had, the Italian Irish, Thailand Chinese, Kenya, Korea, Ecuador, Colombia, Puerto Rico. It's just like Southern African American. And so all of those people are stewarding plants from those places. And so it's an inherently biodiverse farm. We're also growing crops for communities that asked us to provide them. For example, we have a grower from Western India who's based up near Ambler, and she grows in her backyard, but her in-laws will eat every okra pod, And so she's like, can you please steward this Indian okra, since I can't save seeds from it with my family here. And so there's some crops we grow for people who don't have the capacity to save their traditional seeds. And so it's a really biodiverse space based on all the connections we have with different communities and people. Yeah. I see a hand.
Yeah,
Jerry.
yeah, Jerry. And I'm trying to wrap my head around this. It's a great concept because we have friends, Maori friends in New Zealand, who took us on a tour of our property there. And they said the highways were the seeds. And there was a mound where the fort was. And when they were having invaders come in, they had a fenced off area up on this mound. And what they were fencing off was the seeds of sweet potatoes. That's just a fact that I found out. But what I'm wondering about you is you have this space, and is there a house where you sort the seeds, where you gather them all in and they get mailed to you, and then you disperse them out, or how does this? I'm trying to figure out how it gets, the concept of it, the whole thing.
Okay, well, we are a seed company. So if you've ever ordered seeds in the mail, our work is the back end of that. And so there is a house on the property. We rent from the family that owns it. We do use their basement as our seed drying and seed processing area. So as we take our harvests in, a lot of times we use different spaces on the property. Like, for example, for a lot of our crops that make lots of seeds that dry on a long stalk, we'll cut those down, like a celosia, if you know that flower, or different things related to marigolds or measles. They have long stalks with lots of seeds. We cut them down and dry them in the high tunnels or greenhouses, and then whack them in buckets, get the seeds out, use screens and sieves, and clean them through our winnowing machine and bowls and baskets. So there's a whole process for every seed crop. And then it goes into our basement where we dry it for 2 weeks with a dehumidifier and a fan. And then it goes into jars. And then it comes to our office in Kensington, where we have a basement that has climate control, and we have all of our seed packing supplies. And so people sit there and pack seeds in their envelopes using measuring spoons that we've pre-measured for everything, you know, and all the germination testing happens in Kensington. And all of our seed starting happens at the greenhouse across the street there. So we're kind of spread out 30 miles between our two locations. And then I live in Germantown, you know, triangulating the whole thing. So it's a little crazy.
So you
It's
actually have a
interesting.
space that's going to be more than just an acre.
Right.
Put it all
We're
together. Like
hoping for,
about 3 acres or so.
yeah, we would love at least 2 or 3 acres that are farmable with a structure.
In
And
the
so that's somewhere close to Philly, if
Yeah.
not in it. It's hard to find something like that.
Yeah.
So it's a long journey. It's interesting you brought up the sweet potatoes because, you know, that's a South American species. But I don't, maybe you've read this, but the sweet potato is part of the proof of pre-European contact in the Americas from Polynesia.
Yeah.
Maybe you've heard about that. And that's why,
New Zealand is Polynesia.
yeah, exactly. So that's why you would have sweet potatoes there long before, you know, Columbus, etc.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting connection that's often proven by the sweet potato's existence in Polynesia, in archaeological digs, and even the names for it.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Very interesting. Thank you for this.
Yeah, I love the histories of plants. That one's a really interesting one.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jerry. Pam?
So these, you mentioned that somebody got started with a pile of frozen seeds that somebody had been collecting. How long do these seeds last?
Right.
Oh, yeah.
That's a good question. If you freeze them right, they can last a long time. So maybe you've heard of the Doomsday Vault in Norway, Svalbard.
Yes.
And how a few years ago it flooded, even though they built it to be this fortress of seeds. Luckily, it was just the entryway that flooded and no seeds were harmed. But the whole idea there is that they can freeze seeds in the right way and they'll last hundreds of years. In the conditions we store them in, it depends on the species. We watch the humidity and the temperature. Those are the two main factors. And we can save bean seeds for 4 or 5 years in the basement where we keep our seeds, lettuce for 3, onions for 1, tomatoes for 10, corn for 10 to 15. So it's by species how long they'll last in certain conditions. So freezing helps. We don't freeze really anything because we're not keeping things, you know, locked in a vault for generations. We're working with growers who grow them every year. And sometimes we're selling seeds for 2 or 3 years in a row if we have a lot of it. But the germination rate starts to decline and we want to provide the freshest seed that we can. Someday, if we really have a state-of-the-art facility, we might start experimenting with long-term storage. But so far, a basement with a dehumidifier and making sure that the seeds were always in a basement with a dehumidifier before getting jarred. You know, as long as they go into the jar at the right humidity, they'll stay at that humidity unless they're introduced to another environment. And so there's ways that we work with them to prolong their life. So it's working for us so far. But we are talking to some people in Thailand who've developed a technology called dry beads, some kind of clay that you can bake in the oven and it takes all the moisture out of, but it has exactly the right pore size to trap water molecules. And so they're working with farmers and in all these subtropical and tropical, very humid climates to use these dry beads with their crops, whether it's a dried vegetable or seeds, to improve the storage conditions. And so someone contacted us who's connected to them, and we're working to try out some of those systems here in the US with our growers, especially our growers from Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, places that are much more humid, but even up to here, we're pretty humid too. A lot of seed companies are based in much drier places like the Pacific Northwest, and places further north. So we're always working to figure out how to improve the humidity conditions and temperatures of our seed storage.
And how is climate change affecting both your farmers and the quality, the rate of the seeds?
It's very difficult. It's very difficult. When we work with some farmers in California towards the Central Valley, they've had a really, really hard time with droughts in particular. I mean, we even had a drought this summer, and we're lucky to have a deep well and a good irrigation system on a timer. But we also had unusual amounts of heat, like so many days in a row that were near 100 degrees. And that really affects the ability of certain plants to successfully be pollinated. Pollen doesn't really work at a certain temperature for many plants. And so there were crops that didn't do great for us this year. There's certainly parts of the country that had, in the last few years, catastrophic floods that they've never seen in their fields before, or catastrophic droughts. And the fact that it's becoming more and more possible for us to grow subtropical plants here is fun in some ways, but also scary in some ways. I mean, we are able to provide some crops for different immigrant and refugee groups that we wouldn't have expected we could provide, in the past. But we're also dealing with excessive moisture, at certain parts of the year, and excessive dryness. So it's very unpredictable. Every year is different. I'm glad we did not get a real frost this week, though our dahlias did get nipped and some plants got nipped. You never know when the first frost date will be these days. And that changes which seeds we're able to harvest, since we're pushing the limits with so many species, trying to grow different things here. So one thing we can do is, that's the perk of growing seed crops every year versus keeping them frozen, is that they're adapting to the changing climate in real time, right? A lot of times people look at these seed vaults as the solution to climate change because there may be genetics in there that can help breed a climate resilient variety. But the people who are on the ground year after year selecting for the health and vigor and productivity of their plants are the ones really breeding the climate resilient crops, because we're selecting for what does well in the changing climate. So that's a big piece of our work as seed producers. We're also selecting the healthiest plants, the ones that thrive in our conditions. And so it's something that's ever changing, and we're ever adapting through our work. So.
So can you talk about then so what you do is so dramatically different than what the big farms do with genetically engineered seed, right? I mean, it's just diametrically opposed. And so can you just talk a little bit about what can happen with that? Just talk about the differences. Can you just talk about the differences a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, we're so different. It's almost like we're not even doing anything the same. The big companies are really chemical companies that also sell seeds. They're breeding seeds that withstand the application of their chemicals. They're introducing their technologies, their seed and chemical technologies, around the world as a solution to hunger and climate change, using green washing, talking about, a lot of their genetically modified seeds. They're developing the language around no-till, so there's ways that they're implementing sustainable practices into a deeply unsustainable system as a way of pushing it forward. Once communities take the bait and switch to genetically modified organisms, it only takes 1 year to lose 10,000 years of a connection to an indigenous or traditional seed and indigenous or traditional growing practices. And what people are finding in many of these places is that these genetically modified seeds and their associated chemicals and monoculturing just do not work like they've been promised. And so you see people like Vandana Shiva in India, who organizes thousands, 10,000s of farmers to go back to their traditional practices and sustainable practices and traditional seeds. You know, she talks about how many commit suicide from the loss because of the losses and the embarrassment and the devastation of switching to a system that does not work. Thousands, tens of thousands, I don't remember the number of how many farmers in India have committed suicide because of this horrible system not working. You know, I'm about to release an episode of our podcast with my apprentice from Kenya, and something very similar is happening there, where people are switching from their traditional practices to monocultures, to genetically modified organisms, and moving away from land-based living, which is great to move out of poverty, but also losing so much of their traditional practices. And so her work is to maintain their traditional varieties and practices, because they're not just losing those, they're losing the wildlife that lives around those farms, the wild plants, the wild animals. So much is being lost with these new systems of agriculture. And so we're doing the opposite. We are doing the opposite. You know, we're probably doing what they would consider as backwards, you know, maintaining varieties that are really old, that tell a story about a people, that have names, that have stories, that are not spliced with other organisms, that are not doused with chemicals. And so I don't think we're on their map because they're dealing with the whole other universe than we are. We're dealing with people, small scale farmers, seed keepers, and hoping that we can preserve some of these varieties before they're lost due to development and monoculturing and so on. Yeah.
Thank you. Joel? Joel, you're.
Do you sell, you said small farmers, is that who you sell your seeds to primarily, small farmers?
Definitely. And
And
mostly gardeners and small farms.
And are they located in this area all over you send them all over the world? It's farmers all over the world, or where do you sell most of your seeds to? Let's put it that way.
Well, we primarily sell online, and it's definitely a larger percentage of local gardeners and farmers in Pennsylvania and in the mid-Atlantic because of just the connections, and people want to grow seeds acclimated to their climate. But we definitely sell all throughout the United States and Canada and a little to the UK. We used to sell worldwide, and we were getting too many returned packages from customs agencies. And so we're only selling to the US, Canada, and the UK now.
Then the other question along with that, I mean, as we know, the vegetables and fruit and all that kind of stuff is so expensive because I don't know. I really haven't heard why it's so expensive, but I know people used to grow a lot more local food, right? I mean, it's my impression that gardening and local growing was a lot more common in one. And then these big industrial farms took over, and then is that what changed it? And then, so the point is, I mean, what you're doing by encouraging local, farmers, small farmers to buy things, that would be a nice process to start going. I mean, there are. We saw something yesterday about how, like, even things like these big mega farms, they, instead of letting the natural brush grow around the side of the farm, they're cutting it down and making lawns. That gets rid of the bugs. The bugs like their natural habitat, and they don't want to eat these, something that isn't natural. So then they don't live there anymore. And then the birds that eat them to grow their eggs, especially when they're in the egg laying season, that they disappear. So everything is spiraling downward because we got away from traditional ways of doing things. So I think that would be a good selling point for your program, is to besides the fact that you're trying to back and reverse direction. Is that what you do focus? I mean, do you emphasize that when you're pushing this? Because I think I think a lot of people are realizing that now, and I think a lot of people would like to buy your seeds and grow locally for their own garden. You know, maybe Talmy, the guy that with Doug Talmy, is that how you pronounce it? He was trying to get people to grow oaks and to turn leave the litter under the leaves so the grubs and stuff, the bugs could grow there and make your lawn smaller. And he has this national park, wildlife national park, whatever. I forgot how you call that.
Homegrown National Park. But do you have a question for Owen?
Yeah. So the question is that something that you see you might have a way to make that more popular, so your seed business grows and also you're doing the right thing.
Thank you. Yes, I mean, our main focus is the cultural connection. I think that's where we get most of our customers accessing their traditional seeds. But certainly, I mean, I think that's a really important point. I was just talking to Penn State students last week, and they also asked about the chemical or GMO corporations. And I think it does go deeper, like you're saying. It goes deeper to leaving the agricultural lifestyle and becoming bigger and bigger farms. We are losing. That is the main force of losing the biodiversity of the agriculture world. It really predates the GMOs, and you're exactly right. It's about leaving the agricultural lifestyle. The reason we have so many heirlooms that are being lost is because so many people have left farming. Farming is not seen as successful. It's not seen as an honorable thing to do. It's, people are moving to cities and getting other types of jobs, and farms either have to get big, like the big monocultures, or they have to struggle. And so I think you have your finger on something there, and it's important to mention that it's not a new problem. We've been since World War II, moving away from our traditional. People aren't saving seeds anymore. People are now breeding plants to travel across the world without rotting. We're breeding for long-term storage, for moving on planes and trains and automobiles. So we're no longer breeding healthy foods. We're breeding foods that'll fit within a commodity market. And so these are the things that are kind of destroying our health and our food system. And of course, the wildlife is another casualty in that. So thank you for bringing those up.
Thank you. So do you have time for one more question, Owen? I want to honor.
Sure.
Okay. Jerry, last
Yeah.
question.
I just had one other question. You mentioned the lady in India. Is that someone that you sell to too? You didn't mention selling, or is she a grower for you?
She's one of our friends and growers, but she certainly buys from our catalog as well.
Okay.
So I mean, anyone can order from us, and I've noticed her ordering from us. I, of course, would just give her seeds, but a lot of people like to order new things they see in our catalog. She primarily grows Indian crops. She's near Ambler. She's from India, but she's near Ambler.
Oh, thanks. Thanks a lot. I was just curious about that. Thanks
Mhm.
so much for this. It's just been wonderful, Owen.
Yeah, thank you all. I appreciate talking to you.
It's been so great to have you. We are grateful for the work
Thank
that you do, for showing up tonight to spend time with us. And we're looking forward. Anybody can come and get an alternative gift to Truelove Seeds at Bryn Mawr Pres at Christmas time. You can do it online, or you can order from Owen's website, which is, what's your website?
Oh, trueloveseeds.com.
Trueloveseeds.com.
And please check out Seeds and Their People on any podcast app. And if you use social media, we're on social media too. So thank you.
He has beautiful pictures on social media, beautiful pictures. So Owen, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I look forward to seeing you soon.
All right, likewise. Thank you all very much.
Take care, everybody. Have a wonderful November and Thanksgiving.